what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at 6 o'clock. Okay, you see that? Well, welcome to the July 11th meeting of the British Empire Study Group. Thank you for joining us. I don't know about where you are. It's pretty hot out there. So I thank you for coming in, cooling off. Okay, and again, I did this last meeting, but I want to give another special shout out to Charlie for the great design for the British Empire Study Group. I'm slowly transitioning it. Our next presentation will be on, again, Thursday, July 25th with Jamie Smith, and he's going to talk about the Sudan military history, a topic that I'm not very familiar with. So tonight's presentation is Why to Conduct Your Own Philatelic Census by Alan. And to introduce Alan, I have my co-chair, Robert Lutens. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Joan. Are you collecting a specific stamp cover or issue? Are you writing about a specific stamp issue or perhaps building an exhibit? Are you buying or selling a stamp or a cover described as rare? What exactly does rare imply? Question: how do you quantify that something is truly rare? The answer is you need a census. Many of us have read books or catalogs where an object is described as rare, but unless you're intimately familiar with the object, this description should raise some questions. Did the authors of those sources conduct a new census? Or did they just pass on information that they'd read somewhere else? Or, dare we say it, found that information on the internet? How do you know for sure if that information is current or even accurate? Alan Barasch will talk about a census he started for the wonderful covers from the German shipping magnate Hugo Schlattfeld. He'll also discuss techniques, tools, strategies, and issues so you can conduct your own philatelic census. As a bonus, these techniques are equally transferable to other fields of collectibles, and as I'm sure some of you collect more than just stamps out there. Let me share some background about our presenter this evening. Alan accidentally began collecting stamps at the age of 14, and he's been hooked ever since. He founded or co-founded the St. Helena, Tristan da Cunha, and Ascension Philatelic Society in 1977, and the St. Louis Bears Exhibitors Group in 1996. He serves as an officer or is on the board of several local stamp clubs, including the Webster Grove Stamp Club, the American Philatelic Society Writers Unit number 30, Gastronomy on Stamp Study Unit, the Falkland Islands Philatelic Study Group, the Collectors Club of New York, and the Rocky Mountain Stamp Show. He collects the Falkland Islands, Nova Scotia, Israel, Rhodes, and numerous topicals. He's an avid exhibitor who also writes and speaks on a variety of topics. In addition to his extensive philatelic involvement, he's also an information technology professional, technical writer, website designer, database developer, and Microsoft Excel developer. So, without further ado, I give you our esteemed presenter this evening, Alan Barasch.
Thanks, Rob. Just as the government counts noses every decade, a philatelic census is the same kind of count. It's counting how many of a thing exists, and it helps us determine the rarity. Before you could say there's only 3 known, how are you going to determine that statement? I had somebody in my acquaintance that came to us and said, everything in my exhibit is unique. And I said, how do you know? And he said, the dealer that sold it to me told me that. Where did the dealer get it from? Who knows? But it's important to figure out for yourself, is this thing really rare? And then you could say what it is. Here's some known censuses. The circular date stamps of Tasmania, the 1847 issue, the inverted Jenny, the Hawaiian foreign mail, and you can read the rest of the list. I've participated in 2 censuses myself. One was for I was contributing items from my collection for the 2002 Falkland BISEC census, and I performed my own census of Hugo Schopfeld covers, and we'll see some of those in a little while. But here's some items that I found on the web. The sale said this thing was rare, but nobody could tell me how it was rare. Another one said, oh, it was only used by the Boy Scouts. And I got some friends that are really into pre-cancels that probably know a lot more about this than I do. But we'll go forward. When you start to conduct a census, what do you want to know? Do you just want to know, just count how many are out there, or do you really want to have something you could keep forever? Maybe if you want to publish a book or you want to build a website. So, you know, one of the things I said is we want to keep a picture of both the front and the back of the thing, whether it's a stamp, a cover, a baseball card, or a Hummel statue. You want a picture so you can show that it's undamaged and what it looks like. Do you have the certificates from expertising organizations? Do you have provenance from former owners? Some of my things I've known, yes, they were in a famous collection and sometimes not. Years ago, I built a database for someone and we were going to do a census, and he wanted to keep what the color was, what the color of stamp, the color of the envelope, the color of all of each of the cancellations, what the franking was, the analysis of the rates, so that somebody else didn't have to do the analysis again. Or they might decide that, hey, this analysis is all wrong and I want to update you. Keep catalog information, whether you have the Scott or the Minkus or the Michelle or, you know, whoever writes a catalog for your particular interest. So we're going to look at some of the Falkland BISEC covers. Most of these are from my collection, which I sold several years ago when I was getting ready to retire, but we'll talk about that a little bit. When the census was performed in 2002, there were 169 postal items, and 2 of those, one of which was mine, was a piece. It was not a BISEC, but it was actually a cover with a different franking that was mailed on the day that the new rate went into effect. And so it fit into part of that census. Every time we've conducted a census, more things come to light. People see the book come out and they say, I think I have one of those. I need to go find it, and let them know that there are more out there than they thought. And then, you know, let's look at some stamps. That's what we're here for. Years ago, Dempsey Prappus was looking at my exhibit, and he sent me information about some of the BISEC covers he had, like this one. This is the exact cover that was illustration of a BISEC cover in the first 3 editions of the Heights catalog. And as you can see, it was part of my collection. And some people did silly things. Why did they bisect a stamp when they didn't need to? And we discovered at that time of the census that a lot of stamps that were may have been, should have been overprinted were not, because the correspondence people would get the envelope at their house and they'd say, oh, this is a really cool stamp, I'll soak it off. Therefore, examples didn't survive. This one happens to be a survivor. And some other silly stuff. The ruffle correspondence is famous for using bisects 5 years after the actual period. I didn't own this. This is from the John DuPont collection. And it does show how the stamps were actually overprinted and too rich for my blood. The census I actually conducted was for the Schottfeld correspondence. Hugo Schottfeld was the shipping agent for the Cosmos shipping company, based in the Falkland Islands from about 1896 to 1900. And this is his handwriting. So it makes it really easy to determine if it was one of his covers, because I'm a calligrapher and I can't even make that H consistently. So here is one of his covers. This one from a paid reply envelope from the Falklands to Belgium in 1891 with a really cool H. And to the UK in 1895. And to Altoona in Germany in 1896. In the same mailing, because to get stamps, used stamps to dealers in Germany, he would send a stack and number each one. So this one was 26, I believe, and here's number 38. If you look at the up in here, a postal card sent to Bosnia, to Sarajevo. In the back side of the Sarajevo card with his signature on the back. And a rare cancellation, which, that really fits. Another to England with the interesting handwriting. And more. Here's something that really needs a census. In 1964, Falkland Islands printed a set of stamps for the Battle of the Falkland Islands for the 50th anniversary. And somehow one sheet got through with the wrong vignette. So far, 17 stamps have been recorded. I don't know of any census. All I hear is, hey, one's coming up for auction, one's coming up for auction. And, you know, it'd be nice to find out who has them, who found them, and what's the disposition of them now. There's other collectibles that might benefit from a census. Rare sports cards. Who's got a Gretzky rookie card? I sure don't. Or steel pennies, Hummel figures, World's Fair. You know, who kept their poster from going to see Star Wars in 1977? Or airplane tickets or concert tickets. If I had a concert ticket from Richie Valens' last stand, you know, that would be a really great thing to have, and it may need a census. So I went and found some stamps all about censuses. And, you know, whether you're studying population or you're studying birth rates or advertising how great you are, you need to do a census. And that's it.
Oh, that was short and sweet and to the point. We got it. Well needed in our hobby, these censuses. Couple technical questions, Alan. You said you've done these. What do you use? And I'm going to turn this over to Rob Lutens to ask some questions of you, but I'm just curious about technically how you go about it.
Well, the last time I did a census, people contacted me and said, I don't have a computer. Can I send you photocopies of my items? I said, I'll take whatever you can send me, because I would just like to know the things exist rather than have, if somebody was doing it today, I would want high quality JPEGs or PNGs or TIFFs so that we can blow them up and look at everything. Does that answer your question? I started to put it into a database also, and because I'm a database developer.
Oh, great. So for those of us who don't have databases, what would you recommend?
File cards, or start typing them up on a list and add to your list as you get more. Put it in a file folder, pull it out and look at it every few months. It doesn't have to be high tech. It can be very low tech.
So, Alan, if you wanted, okay, once you've established one of these census, you know, of your own material or whatever, how do you take it to the next step? And I mean, where would there be a source or you know, a collecting point, you know, where you would take things to?
Well, first of all, you might while you're building the census, you might contact auction houses, the dealers that collect this stuff. If you're part of the collectors group for that topic, you may want to say contact them and say, I'm conducting a census. Here's my address. Send me pictures of whatever you've got.
Mm-hmm.
At the last one, I got all kinds of stuff. I got some stuff came on the computer. Some people stuffed third generation photocopies into an envelope and sent it to me. And some people just sent me a typed list and said, I got this, but sent no pictures.
Okay. I think what I'm wondering about is an individual has all this material in a census, which is valuable. I mean, if others know about it, that's what I'm talking about. Getting it to the next
It's,
level. I understand what you're saying, though.
you may need to contact Lance and say, can I, a letter to the editor and say, I'm doing this census. Please send me stuff.
Be careful what you wish for.
It sounded a little goofy.
Well, hey, like I said, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at 6 o'clock and I will share my screen. No more sound, I promise. Okay. You see that? Well, welcome to the July 11th meeting of the British Empire Studying Group. Thank you for joining us. I don't know about where you are. It's pretty hot out there. So I thank you for coming in, cooling off. Okay, and again, I did this last meeting, but I want to give another special shout out to Charlie for the great design for the British Empire Study Group. I'm slowly transitioning it. Okay, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is a webinar. So unlike a regular meeting, we cannot see you or hear you. That's sometimes good. But in this case, if you want to know how to communicate with us, you use the chat and we will be happy to talk to you. The meeting is recorded and after the show, we will have it posted on our website and on YouTube. So if there are any questions, please put your questions in the Q&A so that way Rob could go over them with Alan. Okay, if you don't like the chat previews, if you want to stay quiet, you could turn those off. You won't see those. If English is not your first language, or if you are challenged with the hearing, you could just turn on the captions, closed captioning, and you could do them in English or your preferred language. They're pretty fun. We play with them all the time. Okay, another suggestion from one of the members, sometimes is really good information in the chat and you just can't copy it all down. Don't worry about it. Two ways to do it. You could save it yourself by clicking the little three dots and it will say save, very easy. But the real easy way is to just send us a note and Rob or myself will send you the chat notes. That's easier than sometimes figuring out how to do it. So when you come over, if you don't like where Alan is, if you want to see more of the screen or less of him, when you're viewing it, you could just move the panel in beside to whatever side you want. And when you come over, you could just reduce him. Our next presentation will be on, again, Thursday, July 25th with Jamie Smith, and he's going to talk about the Sudan military history. A topic that I'm not very familiar with. Again, this was that ill-fated webinar that we had two of, but we were really lucky to get an additional topic out of it. So sometimes it's very fortunate. So now, Alan, I didn't put the new one up because I actually copied this moving slide. So tonight's presentation is Why to Conduct Your Own Philatelic Census by Alan. And to introduce Alan, I have my co-chair, Robert Lutens. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Joan. Are you collecting a specific stamp cover or issue? Are you writing about a specific stamp issue or perhaps building an exhibit? Are you buying or selling a stamp or a cover described as rare? What exactly does rare imply? Question: how do you quantify that something is truly rare? The answer is you need a census. Many of us have read books or catalogs where an object is described as rare, but unless you're intimately familiar with the object, this description should raise some questions. Did the authors of those sources conduct a new census? Or did they just pass on information that they'd read somewhere else? Or, dare we say it, found that information on the internet? How do you know for sure if that information is current or even accurate? Alan Barasch will talk about a census he started for the wonderful covers from the German shipping magnate Hugo Schlattfeld. He'll also discuss techniques, tools, strategies, and issues so you can conduct your own philatelic census. As a bonus, these techniques are equally transferable to other fields of collectibles, and as I'm sure some of you collect more than just stamps out there. Let me share some background about our presenter this evening. Alan accidentally began collecting stamps at the age of 14, and he's been hooked ever since. He founded or co-founded the St. Helena, Tristan da Cunha, and Ascension Philatelic Society in 1977, and the St. Louis Bears Exhibitors Group in 1996. He serves as an officer or is on the board of several local stamp clubs, including the Webster Grove Stamp Club, the American Philatelic Society Writers Unit number 30, Gastronomy on Stamp Study Unit, the Falkland Islands Philatelic Study Group, the Collectors Club of New York, and the Rocky Mountain Stamp Show. He collects the Falkland Islands, Nova Scotia, Israel, Rhodes, and numerous topicals. He's an avid exhibitor who also writes and speaks on a variety of topics. In addition to his extensive philatelic involvement, he's also an information technology professional, technical writer, website designer, database developer, and Microsoft Excel developer. So, without further ado, I give you our esteemed presenter this evening, Alan Barasch.
Thanks, Rob. Okay. Just as the government counts noses every decade, a philatelic census is the same kind of count. It's counting how many of a thing exists, and it helps us determine the rarity. Before you can say there's only 3 known, how are you going to determine that statement? I had somebody in my acquaintance that came to us and said, everything in my exhibit is unique. And I said, how do you know? And he said, the dealer that sold it to me told me that. Where did the dealer get it from? Who knows? But it's important to figure out for yourself, is this thing really rare? And then you can say what it is. Here's some known censuses. The circular date stamps of Tasmania, the 1847 issue, the inverted Jenny, the Hawaiian foreign mail, and you can read the rest of the list. I've participated in 2 censuses myself. One was for the I was contributing items from my collection for the 2002 Falkland BESG census, and I performed my own census of Hugo Schlattfeld covers, and we'll see some of those in a little while. But here's some items that I found on the web. The sale said this thing was rare, but nobody could tell me how it was rare. Another one said oh, it was only used by the Boy Scouts. And I got some friends that are really into pre-cancels that probably know a lot more about this than I do. But we'll go forward. When you start to conduct a census, what do you want to know? Do you just want to know, just count how many are out there, or do you really want to have something you could keep forever? Maybe if you want to publish a book or you want to build a website. So, I've one of the things I said is we want to keep a picture of both the front and the back of the thing, whether it's a stamp, a cover, a baseball card, or a Hummel statue. You want a picture so you can show that it's undamaged and what it looks like. Do you have the certificates from expertising organizations? Do you have provenance from former owners? Some of my things I've known, yes, they were in a famous collection and sometimes not. Years ago, I built a database for someone and we were going to do a census, and he wanted to keep what the color was, what the color of stamp, the color of the envelope, the color of all of each of the cancellations, what the franking was, the analysis of the rates, so that somebody else didn't have to do the analysis again. Or they might decide that, hey, this analysis is all wrong and I want to update you. Keep catalog information, whether you have the Scott or the Minkus or the Michelle or whoever writes a catalog for your particular interest. So we're going to look at some of the Falkland BISEC covers. Most of these are from my collection, which I sold several years ago when I was getting ready to retire, but we'll talk about that a little bit. When the census was performed in 2002, there were 169 postal items, and two of those, one of which was mine, was a piece. It was not a BISEC, but it was actually a cover with a different franking that was mailed on the day that the new rate went into effect. And so it fit into part of that census. Every time we've conducted a census, more things come to light. People see the book come out and they say, I think I have one of those. I need to go find it, and let them know that there are more out there than they thought. And then, let's look at some stamps. That's what we're here for. Years ago, Dempsey Prappus was looking at my exhibit, and he sent me information about some of the BISEC covers he had, like this one. This is the exact cover that was illustration of a BISEC cover in the first 3 editions of the Heights catalog. And as you can see, it was part of my collection. And some people did silly things. Why did they bisect a stamp when they didn't need to? And we discovered at that time of the census that a lot of stamps that were should have been overprinted were not, because the correspondence people would get the envelope at their house and they'd say, oh, this is a really cool stamp, I'll soak it off. Therefore, examples didn't survive. This one happens to be a survivor. And some other silly stuff. The Ruffle correspondence is famous for using bisects 5 years after the actual period. I didn't own this. This is from the John DuPont collection. And it does show how the stamps were actually overprinted and too rich for my blood. The census I actually conducted was for the Schottfeld correspondence. Hugo Schottfeld was the shipping agent for the Cosmos shipping company based in the Falkland Islands from about 1896 to 1900. And this is his handwriting. So it makes it really easy to determine if it was one of his covers, because I'm a calligrapher and I can't even make that H consistently. So here is one of his covers. This one from a paid reply envelope from the Falklands to Belgium in 1891 with a really cool H. And to the UK in 1895. And to Altoona in Germany in 1896. In the same mailing, because to get stamps, used stamps to dealers in Germany, he would send a stack and number each one. So this one was 26, I believe, and here's number 38. If you look at the up in here, a postal card sent to Bosnia, to Sarajevo. In the back side of the Sarajevo card with his signature on the back. And a rare cancellation, which, that really fits. Another to England with the interesting handwriting. And more. Here's something that really needs a census. In 1964, Falkland Islands printed a set of stamps for the Battle of the Falkland Islands for the 50th anniversary. And somehow one sheet got through with the wrong vignette. So far, 17 stamps have been recorded. I don't know of any census. All I hear is, hey, one's coming up for auction, one's coming up for auction. And, it'd be nice to find out who has them, who found them, and what's the disposition of them now. There's other collectibles that might benefit from a census. Rare sports cards. Who's got a Gretzky rookie card? I sure don't. Or steel pennies, Hummel figures, World's Fair. Who kept their poster from going to see Star Wars in 1977? or airplane tickets or concert tickets. If I had a concert ticket from Richie Valens' last stand, you know, that would be a really great thing to have, and it may need a census. So I went and found some stamps all about censuses. And, you know, whether you're studying population or you're studying birth rates or advertising how great you are, you need to do a census. And that's it.
Oh, that was short and sweet and to the point. We got it. I'm curious that this is really nice, and I think really well needed in our hobby, these censuses. Couple technical questions, Alan. You said you've done these. What do you use? And I'm going to turn this over to Rob Lutens to ask some questions of you, but I'm just curious about technically how you go about it.
Well, the last time I did a census, people contacted me and said, I don't have a computer. Can I send you photocopies of my items? I said, I'll take whatever you can send me, because I would just like to know the things exist rather than have, if somebody was doing it today, I would want high quality JPEGs or PNGs or TIFFs so that we can blow them up and look at everything. Does that answer your question? I started to put it into a database also, and because I'm a database developer.
Oh, great. So for those of us who don't have databases, what would you recommend?
File cards, or start typing them up on a list and add to your list as you get more. Put it in a file folder, pull it out and look at it every few months. It doesn't have to be high tech. It can be very low tech.
So, Alan, if you wanted, okay, once you've established one of these census, you know, of your own material or whatever, how do you take it to the next step? And I mean, where would there be a source or you know, a collecting point, you know, where you would take things to?
Well, first of all, you might while you're building the census, you might contact auction houses, the dealers that collect this stuff. If you're part of the collectors group for that topic, you may want to say contact them and say, I'm conducting a census. Here's my address. Send me pictures of whatever you've got.
Mm-hmm.
At the last one,
Mm-hmm. Okay. Richard Ropiak, you've got your hand up.
Thank
Yes.
you. Going back to the earlier part of your presentation, I realized a minute or two ago that I'm not sure how the word rare gets defined. There's rare stamps, there's rare covers, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, what's your understanding?
It's overused.
Okay, but if we're talking about something that 5 or fewer have been discovered, I would think that would be rare.
Mm-hmm.
If it's 100 or fewer, I understand that it's based on the market. It's based on supply and demand, depending on what pops up in which auctions. But it puzzles me. I hear what you're saying about it being overused, but I still am curious about it.
It's hard to define, but everybody's got their own opinion about how rare their rare thing is. And a lot of times from not really knowing if it is or not, just from reading in a book.
Well, it strikes me that you've opened up Pandora's box here, because
I
all
hope
of these
so.
fine people, all of these fine people paying attention to this lecture are now going to reach out in their own world for their own collections and try and do something similar. The philatelic world may be swamped by requests for people who want to do a census, which might be a good thing, I think.
And one of the things that I thought about while I was doing this was there needs to be a central repository to collect these censuses. And I don't know where that repository would be, but there needs to be a way so that you can go back and say, Joe Schmo did a census of this of these covers in 2024, and he found 60.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Garfield.
Good question for Alan. Alan, if you're going to start a census, and pardon me for using the Canadian context for all you foreigners down there, if you're going to do, let's say, a census of Canada number 37D, which is the perf 12.5 3-cent small queen, where would you start? How do you get the word out that you're doing it? I know that I can talk to fellow collectors in the Philatelic Specialist Society and say, how many do you guys have? And which I might find 2 or 3 because there's only 140 members of the society. How do you reach the rest of the North American mass where you're going to find most of this stuff?
You have the Royal Canadian group and maybe put a advertisement in their journal that said, hey, I'm researching this thing. Tell me what you got.
I guess the thing I'm trying to try, I did that once. I wrote an article on a very specific postal marking, and it was the only one that I had ever seen. Hearsay, and if you read the journals, it says maybe there are 5 strikes known to exist. But so I published the article, and with a nice request at the end saying, hey, let's do a census on this thing. Anybody who's got one, please let me know. It's been 3 years since we did this. I haven't heard from anybody yet, but I know darn well it's not a unique item.
Yeah.
So, but if I go by the census, it's unique because I'm the only one that's got one. But I know the other guy that's got one didn't even respond. So it throws an error factor into the quality of your census right off the bat. If those who hold the things, A, don't know that you're doing it, or B, if they know you're doing it and don't respond.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't you have to be a little proactive too? I know for the auctions here, we go through old auction catalogs looking for stuff.
Do you index your auction catalogs?
Yes, we do. Not maybe publicly available, but on a Google search, you could find it. But we do it the old-fashioned way. Keith has a library, and we go out, and that's how we do it. But Anton.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you for the presentation. I'm curious, how enthusiastic are people who you contact about getting you information? For example, if you were to send out 100 emails to people you think have, and I just throw out 100, I don't know how many you would, to people you think would be, have some information for you, how likely are people to respond to you?
Mostly I found that people respond better when they read it someplace and know that, hey, somebody's doing this. Me just scattering my words out in email, people will say, more spam, get rid of it.
Mhm. Okay, and Mark Boyce, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, the Stamp Auction Network has an inventory of things that are sold in auction houses that are covered by their network, and that would give you at least a start if to know whether it's something that you could even think of censusing, I suppose. I mean, if you're going to do a census, there's got to be a finite number of items to work with. I mean, less than 300 or 400, I would think that would make it even feasible.
I'm aware of some of these census place people that have set up a site for that, but it seems to be what I looked at was mostly one country or something. So
Everybody there. There's 109 people on it. How many? 109?
Hello, Lay.
Hi, it's Lee Hogg in Waterloo. Good to see everybody and some familiar faces we know out of Toronto and so on. We're in Canada. I am doing a census currently and have a wreck of 1899 ship off the Scottish coast. And to confirm what Alan was talking about, several articles written back in the 90s quote 15 to 16 covers. I have 27 personally and nowhere there are 12 more. So, you know, time is a great equalizer, and I would encourage anyone that's doing a census to realize that fact and ensure that they, are not surprised by what comes up and so on and so forth. You know, the other 12 have eluded me, or I don't know where they are, or I've missed the sale, or whatever. But it's interest. I go back to catalogs. I go to old catalogs. One cover I purchased out of the Maloney collection. Does anybody recognize the name Maloney? Apparently a name sale in the 1950s. So there you go. No one knows what it was, and no one may remember Lichtenstein or Casberry in another 50 or 100 years. But be that as it may, your old information and you're searching around through old auction catalogs and old price lists and so on. And the internet allows you to do that pretty easily to see if you can locate particular item or postal history item or stamp that you're interested in or inverted center or whatever. Anyway, take care. Great session. Thank you.
thank you.
This is Bert Stevenson. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm a newbie, and I have a very specific census that I'm interested in. It's basically, do you have any United States postage due stamps that were canceled by a post office in the British Empire? And it's apparently, I have one example of that. It was canceled by a post office in Solgrave, which is in Oxfordshire. And I would like to know if anybody else has any U.S. postage due stamps that were canceled by a post office in the British Empire. Has anybody heard of anything like it?
My understanding of the regulations that American stamps used in Canada were not canceled. there was a circle put around them or a note put beside them, but they were not supposed to be canceled, and that may be a UPU regulation. So you may run into the odd case where it would be very unusual that a foreign a postal service would cancel a foreign stamp. I think that's probably a UPU regulation, but I don't know for sure.
Okay.
Where could you go for information?
What happened was is I went to APS and in their postal store, postage stamp store, I bought two pair of US 2-cent postage due stamps that were canceled with great big block letters, Soulgrave. And I've written to the Soulgrave post office, which still exists, and I've gotten no reply. But they're beautiful. I mean, the cancellation is beautiful, but it's the only one that I have found that they paid the 6 pence, and apparently somehow it got back to the United States. It may have been, if any of you are familiar with Tony W., who was a aficionado of postal history, especially of postage due stamps. And it may have come from his collection. I don't know. Okay, I think I've got something.
Duncan Barber, you got your hand up.
Again?
Yeah, on the cancelling of foreign stamps, the UPU rules are that foreign post offices receiving uncancelled stamps may, but are not required to cancel them.
Okay.
In Canada, they really don't want them cancelled with a date stamp because people think that that's when it was posted, which is a bit ridiculous. If the return address is Lincolnshire and it's postmarked Barry's Bay, it's a bit absurd to think that it was shipped on the day of the Barry's Bay postmark.
Thank you.
Piyush,
Yeah. Hi, this is PK from Bangalore, India. I've been doing a census for the last 15 years on mail from India flown on Zeppelin flights. Now, these are obviously, not very plentiful. And the interesting thing I found is some of these were largely sent by registered post. So what I have is examples of multiple letters on the same Zeppelin flight, multiple covers, with different registration numbers on the label. So let's say I have 3 covers on a given flight, and for example, the registration number is 230, 232, and 239. And I have such covers on, several flights. So my question is there a statistical or mathematical model that could give me, with a reasonable degree of accuracy, allow me to compute how many of these were actually produced or flown on that?
I don't know of anything. Does anybody else?
Richard Mazel, the founder of our group, was phenomenal at that type of statistical analysis. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but it's a good university thesis for some statistician.
yeah.
Perhaps Cheryl Gantz would know some more information, like there should be, because of weight in Zeppelins. You would think that they would know how many envelopes or bags of mail or whatever. They might have the poundage, but they may not have the exact number of items flown each flight. And certainly the registration numbers may be recorded somewhere as of 101 to 134, or again, it's very difficult. So that would be very difficult information to do, but I would suggest Cheryl Gantz, being a Zeppelin expert, that she might know.
Thank you.
Good one, Lee.
Kevin Lothar.
Yes, good evening. I'm aware of two censuses that are maintained today. One I helped to get going several years ago on the 1917 red error 5-cent stamp. And there is someone who is maintaining that now day to day, mainly by looking at all of the auction catalogs as they come out. It's probably, I'm guessing, 95, 98% accurate. We've had it in place for almost 15 years, and it's only very occasionally that something gets added to it. Another census is being maintained by Dick Larkin, whom some of you may know, on AEF booklet pane covers. And that also is probably a very, very accurate census. But it occurs to me that there ought to be a central place where people working on these censuses can be listed and located.
Yes.
To me, that's kind of an obvious step. So I'll offer that and allow you to continue. It's a very interesting discussion.
I'll work on that.
Where would you suggest, Kevin?
Well, I would start with the APS, definitely. Maybe sort of a roundtable discussion with some of the societies. Philatelic Foundation, which has an archive, Siegel, which has an archive. All of these people have different, aspects that they deal with. But if there was some way to centralize this and make sure that we know day to day who is actually maintaining or starting a census. Right now, it's just scattershot. And the danger is that if someone drops out, what happens if Dick Larkin decides not to do it anymore? Who's going to do it? So if there were a way for him, for instance, to pass the torch, so to speak, that could be part of the process. But I don't think this is going to be hard to do.
Kevin, I believe that most people that are doing a census are members of a specialist group or society, potentially, that would be associated with the census, and it would be up to the society or club or group of individuals to maintain that. But yeah, centralized through APS or Rocky Mountain or Collectors Club of Chicago or wherever would be probably ideal, but it takes time and money and people and effort to do that. So who's got the reserves to do that? That's a good question. But you raise an interesting point, Kevin, and I concur. The major societies or the major literary units that are out there that communicate with each other is the ideal spot where it can be shared globally.
Well, we could, what we'll do is we'll take it as a to-do, Alan and Rob. We'll write a letter. We'll talk to Scott English and see what he suggests. And maybe BNAPS is pretty up with the computer technology. So you need someone who's a little bit savvy on computers. Adrian.
Unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me? Because I'm on my backup camera. My other one's giving up the ghost. So by the time I'm down to do some talks to this to the British Empire Study Group, and I'll make sure I have a new camera by that time. The point I'm going to make is that one of my specialities is the Crimean War, and I found very useful information from auctioneers, providing you get them at the right time and not just after an auction. This, for example, I don't know if he'd thank me or not for telling you all, but this Carl Lewis has a date at Corinfila in Switzerland, keeps a database of rare postal history items. I don't know into what depth he goes on it, but I find it very useful. On an American aspect, the Richard Frajola's site is also very good, and I'm sure other American auctioneers might come up very useful. Dealers, yes, as well. But as I said, I've really found the auctions more useful than dealers. Also, the auction histories, like Invaluable, that cover auctioneers from some years back, are also very good. So I hope you could hear that. So that's my point. That's what I've got to say.
Thank you. Tony Ward.
Yes, thank you. Look, in a moment, Alan, hopefully you'll get a visit from another person shortly about your Falkland Islands situation and the census you are hoping they might be able to do. If he's just on the phone. What's the importance though of doing the backs of the stamps? I can understand it if there's some sort
No,
of
I was thinking more of the back of the envelope. I'm more of a postal history guy.
Excellent idea to record as much as possible, you know. Yeah.
Hey, you take the picture of the back of the stamp, you can tell if it's hinged or it may even show repairs or something. Who knows? Gary Weiss.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
One of the questions that I have is lots of people, sometimes myself, don't like to give out information of what I have because I'm very private about what I own. And there are real difficulties in getting certain collections to open themselves up to sending you the material. Have you found ways to get these secrets out? Or is there a place to put it through an intermediary so that it maintains anonymity? I say this because when I was younger, I was always friendly about giving out information until I started getting requests to sell what I have from my collection, which I found very offensive. And I don't like people saying, you have that, you should sell it to me for my exhibit, or just leave me alone, or asking me for huge amounts of work. One of my friends was doing a census on Canal Zone first day covers with Crosby cachets. And he said, he knows I have some, would I send him illustrations of all of them? Well, I only have 1,000 or so. I didn't feel like scanning each of them. And eventually said to him, I'm going to be at this show. I'll bring them to you. You can do whatever you want. And I carried this huge steamer trunk of them and said, have fun. But there's asking for lots of work that people have to do to give you information. Sending you one cover may be easy, but some census want a lot more information, making it very hard work for the people you're requesting. And others use the information, let's say, against you or to annoy you. So just want to make sure that people know that. I now, in my articles that I write, where I ask people to send me information, say, send me or the editor of the journal the information so it can be stripped and sent out so that we can have a better census. That's what I wanted to say.
Generally, the censuses that I have been involved in, we're looking at less than 200 of this thing exists. It's not like we're looking for a whole steamer trunk. We're looking for each person probably has one or two of these things.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if somebody's looking for a census with 1,000 or more, it's just gonna be a waste of time.
Exactly.
That's like estimating the population of the United States. You're never going to get it accurate.
We may never get it accurate, but there are many things with those numbers that census is a desirable thing. The Canal Zone Study Group is doing a census now of stamps perforated P by orientation of the perfin. I'm not the one doing the census. And the number of stamps I would estimate for all the stamps with perf Ps probably is on the order of 5,000 stamps, but some of the individual items have one known and some have 10 known, and I don't think any of them have 300 known.
Well, the ones with 1 and 10 are worth doing, but once you're over 50, there's a bunch.
Well, but for ones and tens, I'm not sure census is the thing that's needed. Here are the pictures of the one.
Yeah.
It's the ones that have more that you'd like to know which ones are scarce and which ones are common. And there's a lot to be said for, in spite of the inaccuracies, to have censuses of, and something with 1,000 is not common. It's still rare. It's just a different level of rarity.
I'd like to pose a question. Can you use census data, of which there's quite a bit that's been collected to date? Can you use this to formulate or make some concept as to survivability of certain covers or even stamps? In other words, if you know that, let's say, for example, 100,000 postcards were produced of a particular kind, and you do your survey and you find, I don't know, 200 or 300, does that give you an indication of survivability of a class of mail? And if you can look at across a large enough group of census, especially with postal history, can you then get some, because I've heard like a rule of thumb, like you go from 100 to 1% after 100 years. And I think that's like a comforting statistic, but I have no basis to believe it. It's just, what people say. And it may be even accurate. I just don't know. I was just curious if anybody had given thought in that area.
No.
To give you an example of survivability, the wreck that I was talking about, SS Labrador, 1899, there were purported to be 17 bags of mail from Canada and Newfoundland that were rescued off the shipwreck. And there are now, as far as I know, 39 surviving covers. So you figure out the percentage.
Well, 17 bags would hold how many pieces of mail?
Well, that's a good question, but I'm assuming the mail bag is the same size as they are today or similar. So there could be, 2,000. I don't know. I'm guessing 3,000, 4,000 in a mail bag. I don't know. I'm what is the weight of 500 letters, 1,000 letters, 1,500 letters? I don't know. So, but I'm guessing there'd probably be 2,500 letters in a mail bag on that basis. And there's only one known registered mail piece. There's mail that has come from foreign lands through Canada to be shipped to England on that basis. But anyway, that's to be discussed later in my book.
Yeah. But I think if you have enough examples like that, where you can go back and say, this was approximately the amount of known potential number of total covers, and how much is extant from the or identified from the census, that'll give you an idea of survivorship in terms of the number of years. And I think if you get enough examples like that, you could actually do some real science, or at least some real math. Anyway, which may be applicable to other people's investigations. Like I'm working on a census of postcards from a prisoner of war camp, and I know from Red Cross inspections and other data approximately how many postcards were actually used. And going through auctions and internet and so forth, I found about 400 of them. My question is that 10% because people sit on them in their collections, or is that a real number? And there's really no way of knowing what you haven't found yet. But
you would have to know how many prisoners in the POW camp, and then extrapolate that over a period of time. How long was the camp open? When did it close? When it was at
oh no, I have all that information. I know that on average each prisoner sent 7.5 postcards per month, and I know the number of prisoners in the camp year to year, so I can easily calculate the total estimated pretty accurately the total number of postcards that were actually used.
I think average survivor rates are probably 2%, if that.
over 100 years.
Probably in most situations, whether it's mail from offices, lawyers' offices, or whatever, you take all the lawyers' offices in New York, how many saved the Kennedy mail? Well, we're all familiar with maybe with Kennedy mail from Canada to New York, but there were more than one lawyer's office in New York at the time of 1855 and 1860. So my gut feeling says the 2% number is probably somewhere correct on that basis, but that's just a guess.
Anyway, okay. I guess it's food for thought. Thank you.
Paul, you have a question. Thank you.
Well, not so much a question as an observation. I mean, it's interesting listening to people talk about censuses they've either participated in or would like to initiate. I'm a member of a number of New Zealand societies, New Zealand Society of Great Britain, the Royal of New Zealand, and a number of others. And a number of our members have conducted censuses. One of the best I've seen is a census that was conducted on classic covers. So that's from the 1860s, 1870s. And this gentleman has been putting this together for a number of years now. And I would say it's 90% complete, because most of the covers from that classic period have come through famous collections or are reasonably well known. Others still keep coming out of the woodwork, of course, but they're generally less, well, let's use the term rare. But what he's able to do, he's put together an Excel spreadsheet, and what he's able to do with that spreadsheet is to interrogate the data he has, so he can tell you how many covers were posted from a particular city to a particular destination to a particular country. It's a fantastic database. Tony Ward, you may have seen the same database that Klaus has put together. And he's only too happy to share that with anyone who would like to see it. And I think that underlines one of the messages that has to be put out. These things have to be collaborative. You can't expect to get information from people unless you're prepared to share that information with them as well. He keeps that database himself, but as a society, we've talked about hosting other censuses on our website, and that would then be accessible to other members. What we would probably do is keep the identity of the material separate, so that wouldn't be visible to people wanting to look at the database for the first time. But I think databases are important, and judges in exhibitions, both national and international, are expecting more and more to see some rationale for quantifying scarce, rare, and other statements like that.
So yeah, I think you're right about the identity, because I've heard so many times about if you have something and then someone, as soon as someone who shouldn't know that you have something, they look you up, and all of a sudden, you know, you're calling the police because you have a break-in, and you know, there's been awful things like that. So I do appreciate what both Gary and you're saying about keeping the name of the current owner or the owners anonymous, so that way you're not giving people a playbook for, you know, where to go.
It's useful to record provenance if a particular item has been through several hands in the past, through named sales, and that's useful information.
Yeah, and you know, the silly thing is, if someone does, you know, make way with it, all the auction houses, we get the red, you know, red alert that something's been stolen. So you're on the lookout for, especially the rare stuff, which is easily, you know, identifiable. Thank you for sharing. Tony.
Yes, it's interesting. Once you've asked the relevant specialized little group about who has what or what's available. One way of getting to the people that perhaps aren't members of these groups is to just put it in an exhibit somewhere and say, this is one of only 2 known examples. And if somebody else has got one, they'll come up very quickly and say, well, yes, I've got one, Hopefully that's what they'll do. That's the aim anyway.
I think if you're going to, Tony, if you're going to say 1 of 2 known, you need to reference that to a census.
Yes, yeah. That's what I'm saying. There's there are several collections that I've known of that they say the collection is full of things which are 1 or 2 known, and I don't doubt the fact that is true, particularly with the age of the exhibit and the knowledge of the person doing it and their general expertise. It's just quite if you don't list what it is, a census is only as good as the next census, isn't it?
Sometimes just talking about it is very good. We were at a dinner and I was taught someone wanted to sell me an 1847 on a morning cover. And he says, oh, it's the only one known. I said, well, it's not, because I have one already. And then someone else in the back of the line says, yeah, I have one of those too. So now it went, in the course of less than 10 minutes, it went from the only one known to 3 known. And how many more once we start, really talking about it and asking people. I think, Gary, do you have something else? You have some comment?
Yes. The question was asked about survival and can you really estimate some number? The answer is almost certainly no. In canal zone stamps, Dick Saltz, I don't know if any of you knew him, kept a census of the canal zone errors with 20 or less known, with pictures from auction catalogs all the way back and from all of our collections that we would send him. And for some of them with 10 known, 10 are known. And for others with 10 known, we only have 3 examples with photographs. So there is no one number that I can say, if there's 10 printed, there should be 5 out there. It varies pretty widely. So I'd love to be able to say what survival is in general, but the answer is it's very variable. And one we all sort of know is USC3A, where 100 were made, and there's 90 some odd known, and we even know which positions are not found at this point. So some have a very high retention rate, and others, we know a lot more were made, but how many British Guiana penny magentas are out there? 1. How many were printed? At least more than 1. So there's very tremendous variabilities. And for many of us who collect specialized areas, I know certain things should exist, but no one has seen it, no one has it. But it existed at one time before so which ones are destroyed, we don't know. And so many times when I've felt that something didn't exist, that's when I'm surprised that it appears in auction the next week. And I buy it.
Duncan.
Yes, December last year, I had an exhibit where I said, oh yes, there's only one of these known. I've seen 50 of the covers. I own 33 of them. Regrettably, in the last year, another 1,000 have shown up. So my unique item, I now have 77 of them. And it comes in 2 or 3 different varieties. So, of course, it is moderately modern, being 1993 to 1998. They never show up described in auction lots because they're deemed to be modern junk. Sorry to insult all the auctioneers on the call, Joan.
Lee?
Thank you.
Hold on, nice dog.
Yeah, the conversation around Thank you. Carrie was eager to participate in the call. The conversation around the rarity of things and so on leads me to think that everybody here, whether it's Duncan, Stephen, Alan, Joan, yourself, George, Tony, all of us should be motivated to write into our local journals, to our society journals about the findings. The internet has allowed us today to communicate easier, cheaper, faster. And the point of the exercise is that we're all doing a census. And by communicating what you have and what you feel that you have is unique, leads us to understand that there's more out there. So I saw in the chat column 0.1% survival rate. Whether that's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. What matters is what you have, and you tell your story and other people participate. So I would encourage everyone that's listening here tonight, there's still 75 of us left. There was 109 at one time, but I would encourage you to take your best 10 items, write up an article about them, and distribute it widely so that we all can participate and say, gee, I've got one of those, or I know where there's one, or there's a whole collection in a member of our local club, et cetera, et cetera. So communication has been rendered immediate through the internet, and I would encourage.
You muted yourself, Lee.
You have to unmute yourself, Lee. We lost the last part there. But, if you could unmute, Lee. Okay.
Looking for
Technical difficulties.
Okay. This is Yvonne, and I'd like to say something about I have a cover from Dorothy. I can't think of her last name now. Hold on a second.
While she's running, Duncan, you talk about the unique items. Back when Alan Steinhardt was a judge, you dared not use the word unique because he would always say, and you want to see the other one?
Well, the other story was of someone who had a unique item, and unfortunately, someone was exhibiting the other three in the next exhibit.
Yeah.
Or Alan had 5 in stock.
This is Yvonne again.
Yeah.
I have a Dorothy Knapp cover, and what Doug Weiss did was he put a little article in the Lens asking for people, if they had a cover, to contact him. And then I went to a show and I met him, and I said I did have one, and he did put it into this book, but he was very open about asking for that. I do know my husband was saying, well, maybe it's worth more of this or that. And I'm like, well, I'm in Ponca City. Who's going to come get that cover, from me? But the deal is that he wrote this book about that. If you're writing a book about it, put an ad in the Lens. People will contact you if they see that. It just happened to be that I saw that little article in there. But I think that was a really good way to get some sort of a census on those covers. Thank you.
I know somebody else from Ponca City.
Oh, really?
I'm having lunch with him next week.
Oh, does he collect stamps?
Yes, he does.
Well, I'd really like to meet some other people who collect stamps in Ponca City.
No, he lives in St. Louis.
Oh. Well, it is kind of a small world. I belong to the Haiti Philatelic Society, and I've been open when I do go to an auction of what I have bought, especially when it's one of 50 that are known to have been made. And I think that we're pretty open about trying to get a census on certain stamps that are rare, in that from Haiti Postal Society information. So the different societies do have some census information about the rarities in their societies. And that's a very important place to go look for that information.
Old Davy, you got your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick thought that we've commented mostly tonight on postal history on covers, where fundamentally each cover is unique. If you categorize it down far enough from destination, address, origin, and so on, you know the cover will be unique. Whether that's significant or not is a different matter. But what about stamps? I mean, in many cases, it's very difficult from a scan even to tell the difference between two stamps. So how is a census going to help? What use
I
can
would
we put it to there?
disagree.
Okay.
I've done a lot of comparisons on stamps, and I've found stamps that the PF has issued a genuine certificate for, and got them to reverse the opinion on those based on high resolution scans and lifting the overprints off. But with the older stamps, every one is so unique, and if you get a 600 or 1200 DPI resolution, you can look at I can get 100 inverted jennies, and I can tell which one goes where. I was thinking it would be real. I have a lot of stamps that are unique or close to it. And it would be real nice if there was maybe one website where people could anonymously submit a high resolution image of their stamp front and back, and a group of people, some group starts putting this database together. And if it's, it would, over time, it would be known in all stamp collecting circles, and you would have, because it's nice to know how many of these rare stamps, 50, or if there's 100 of them produced, it's nice to know how many of them are out there. And I think anybody that has that kind of stamp, if there could be some type of anonymity, would like to know and would like to have their stamp be part of that census.
Well, of course, if you've got a rare stamp, when you come to sell it, what you don't need is a census that tells you there's 20 times more stamps out there than you thought there were, and you might actually include in the auction description.
Well, but that's being fair. I mean, when I sell a stamp, and I think I have only 3 of them and another 30 pop up, I'd rather be honest to the people I'm selling it to, knowing how many there are. 30 is still a pretty rare stamp, and
Sure.
I think people ultimately want to get down to the truth of how many are out there.
Alan, I would like to be
Plus is
one
one
of the
to tell
first
the
3
truth.
out.
I couldn't understand that comment.
Go ahead, Lee. I'm sorry.
Well, I'd like to be one of the first 3 out. If there's 3 known and then there's another 100 that pop up, I'd like
Sure.
to be one of the first 3 out.
Yep, no question about it.
Tony.
Yes, Mark, you came on a little bit later, Mark. You didn't hear Alan speaking about the need for the Falkland Island, the one with the different boat vignette on it, to perhaps having a census on that particular item.
Yeah, that would be real handy to have that, and like I say, as you know, I picked up one of those just mint never hinged here recently, and it just came back with the good cert from the Royal. We knew it was a genuine stamp. I bought it from Siegel Auctions, but I wanted someone to, verify that it was mint never hinged. But yeah, it would be nice to have a census of those stamps, because there were supposedly 60 of them, one sheet of 60 printed, and who knows how many are still out there. They didn't quite notice it right away when they sent them out.
You go ahead.
Yes, quick question, a little bit off topic, but Lee Hogg had mentioned something about a Kennedy covered, and I wouldn't mind speaking to him on the side because I picked up, I believe it's the same Kennedy out of New York. And it somewhat relates to Alan's interest in Nova Scotian stamps in postal history, because this is a letter from a stamp was covered from Nova Scotia to the Kennedy from a famous Nova Scotian. But so I wouldn't mind talking with Alan sometime as well about some Nova Scotia items.
Well, if we could put the two of you together, or you could just put it in the chat, send us a note afterwards, and we'll try to make the connection.
Thank you.
John, welcome.
Yes, I was just thinking, wouldn't the people who give certificates keep good census about all the rare stamps that they actually give certificates for? Like Garfield should give you an interesting reaction to that. And that would be a first place to look for whether that particular stamp is very scarce, because then they would have a record of what they've actually certified.
We need a chance.
We do have a database at the Green Foundation of the items that we've certified, but we don't tabulate that at database at all.
Any way of persuading the Green to make some of that information available like the PF does? Because the PF is really helpful as far as looking up how many stamps at least they've had. Or
I don't think that we're going to do it. It has been a principle in the past that we don't do it. And anytime, or I shouldn't say anytime because that exaggerates, but frequently when we've let information out about what's on certificates, we invariably get people bitching about the accuracy of the certificate. Oh, I got one that's better than this, or you're wrong or you're right. And it is not worth the hassle, because a certificate is an opinion at that moment, and you never know when something better is going to come along to diagnose the thing. I mean, there are many certificates that could be wrong out there, because technology has changed the way we look at stuff. So it's just not worth putting it out and having people constantly sniping at you and having you review and question the validity of your certificates. And to that point, I mean, we just installed a VSC 8000 at the Green, and I've been messing around with the three-dimensional imaging. And as of 2 weeks ago, we now have a definitive way of distinguishing sporadic proofs of Newfoundland early Pence issues. That has been a nightmare for years for expertising committees. But now, thanks to three-dimensional imaging, we do have a conclusive proof. And we used it yesterday for the first time in anger, shall we say. It works. But you got to spend $145,000 to buy the machine to do it.
Or $35 for a certificate.
Well, yeah, charge more for a cert. That'll do it. So the technology is changing, and for that reason, we don't feel it's worth making certificates public.
Okay. Because it would have a value. You might consider it.
I think that if somebody came in with a specific research question, we could allow access to the database, but I'm just not sure we allow access to all the certificates.
John, did you have anything else, or we?
No, just thinking that would be a good source of information. It can be not giving any information about who owns it or anything, just the fact how many they've seen.
Yeah, and John, that would be in our database. We could tell how many we've had submitted, and we could also tell at a glance how many of the certificates were good and how many were bad as well.
So that information would be available?
Yeah, probably on request. We'd have to. Now, there's a qualifier here, and that is the certificates that we did from 1975 till about 2000 are not online. So somebody would have to go back and do counting. I think the database would probably be accurate from 2008 onward, but prior to then, I wouldn't want to count on any numbers being accurate.
Well, that would be quite reasonable, I think. That'd be interesting to be available and quite worthwhile.
I wonder what the Royal does.
Again, the same questions.
Yeah.
Is it available? And would be, if so, it would be quite useful.
I don't think the Royal in London has their certification record online. I have approached them in the past and asked for a specific item how many good certificates they've issued, and they've given me that information. They have it all in record books, so it's accessible.
That's good.
You know, that the technology today, folks, is improving and has improved so dramatically. That's why Mr. Steinhardt didn't like the word unique. I don't like the word unique. You know, communication is important, and whether you have something that's certified and is correct. I was going to suggest to Garfield that my block of 4 and 3 singles of the laid paper 2-cent large Queen Canada, nobody knows about them. I don't even know where they are. So therefore, do they exist? You know, like this is a real problem, that there could be a lot of great material out there. And I've been collecting seriously for 50 plus years. And I'm sure there are a number of people here that have been collecting seriously for 50 years plus. And so in the estate sale of Lee Hogg, whenever that may occur, there'll be material said, gee, I never saw that before, and so on. It's just like I quoted earlier, a Maloney postcard that came with the wreck. And that was in 1954 or 56. No one's seen it since then. Like, give me a break. There's material out there that we haven't seen in 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. So and keep in mind the Caspary collections, the Liechtenstein collections, they weren't all photographed. They weren't all copied or scanned. So there's a great job to be done, and please communicate with your local society or the society, the specialist society you belong to, or the national society that you belong to, and keep writing articles and spreading the good word.
Duncan.
You got something going on?
Yeah, I just did the math. My lovely HP reverse Polish notation calculator. At one time, there were 168,000 plate 11 penny blacks. They're deemed to be a rarity these days.
Wow. The other thing I wanted to add that I see a lot is when we get in a lot, the owners usually have handwritten censuses, you know, where they've tracked them themselves, and that is, unless you include it in with the lot, that gets lost. So I think there also has to be, in addition to where you actually conduct the census, but a place to send all that material so it doesn't get lost. Like I try to send it to the APS or the APRL. What they do with it, I mean, unless it's scanned, it doesn't have too much value unless you're collecting it and really want it. But that's another thing I think is really important, that if you do a census and you have your notes, that you share those, and so that way they do get out there and they.
So on the 12 covers I don't own from the wreck of the SS Labrador, I have either located them in auction catalogs dated in the 80s or 90s or specialty sales. I record that on the photocopy. I print it off on my printer, hopefully in color, not the black and white from covers that have stamps that have soaked away and don't appear. So they're pretty ugly pieces of paper, but the point of the exercise is record where you've got it from, when you printed it off, so that you don't have to go back and look at it again. And secondly, yeah, get the front and back, as Alan said. record all the information as possible. There's stains from map stamps in Canada. The Christmas stamp stained the paper as the stamps were being soaked off and got wet in the ocean off the coast of Scotland, and so on and so forth. So there's identifying marks on every stamp or cover that you have, and record that data, keep it with your collection. And if the collection outlives you, then so be it when it's sold. Hopefully the auction house or the auctioneer understands the value of your supplementary notes. And again, that's why when you're writing articles, you put notes down so that people can track what you've done or where you've done it. So again, it's all about communication, communication, communication. And I would encourage everyone, all 57 of us that are left on the line, to communicate all of your scarce and rare items and items that you find of great interest with your societies that you belong to.
Hello.
Hi, Wayne.
Hi. I have 5 different census of early Canadian material. It's all on the British North American Philatelic Society webpage. But I just want to make a couple comments on what's been said before. I like to, when I'm comparing, I might say there's 500 covers of Canada to US of something paid with the 6-pence stamp. But then I'll say there's only 100 known paid with 2 or 3-pence stamps. And there's only 2 or maybe 20 double rate covers, or maybe 5 money rate covers. So by saying I could compare all the different rates to the US, the 500 of a common rate gives me a basis, and then all the other ones that are I can be compared to that. And also, I find sometimes people hide what they have because they don't. When something, if I say there's 10 of something known, they may have some, but they don't want the fact that they haven't known, because when it comes up for sale, the auctioneer may say there's 10 known, 10 reported. And if somebody reports they had 3 more, well, it makes it more common, so they don't report it.
I know somebody that hoards that information, and so we don't tell him anything anymore.
Mark, chime in.
These, and then another sheet, part of another sheet emerged, and still, a lot of people still think there's only the 90 whatever copies there are, and the price really hasn't changed much yet, but there are, that has changed.
Alan, any other words of wisdom?
Write it down and make it known, and make it known to your family where your census is, so that it will not be thrown out.
Right.
I enjoyed it, folks. We started a really great discussion tonight.
I think that's with a couple to-dos. Alan?
Yes, I know.
In spare time. No, we'll work together. I think it's really important. I think we have to get this in front of some people to try to get the groups to.
Yeah, we'll talk.
Can I throw in some personal observations?
Oh, right ahead, Peter.
Yes, I apologize. I came in very late, but I have been cataloging the U.S. Scott 295 2-cent train stamp from the Pan American Exhibition. I've cataloged 2,500 copies in my personal collections, mainly because I can afford the silly stamps, but also because with a USB microscope, I'm able to find plate varieties that have never been reported. So I'm cataloging my entire collection as a library cataloger. I'm using Excel to do this. And the whole collection, I'm going to have to publish the thing because when you've got a lady waving from the train, that's not supposed to be in there, but it's in there. And with the advent of new technology, and thank you, Excel, it's actually a little easier to catalog things. So in my club, the Sequoia Club in Redwood City, California, I've been giving copies of a simplified Excel spreadsheet so you can catalog your own stuff. And if anybody's interested, I'd be more than willing to share this because it's just super, super easy and simple. Is this of any interest to anybody? If so, you know, send me a message or something and I'll forward the Excel spreadsheet to you at no cost.
If you missed it, you know, we'll forward it on to Peter if that's, he already said it was okay, so we'll.
Yeah, I'm sure that this has already been invented. I apologize, I came in late.
That's okay. Now, you mentioned a microscope that you're using. What is that?
It's a USB microscope.
Oh,
so
it's
it
just
plugs
USB.
into your computer and you buy it from, of all places, Lighthouse.
Okay.
It works best on the PC, but it will work on the Mac. And you have to use, I forgot what that was called, Photo Booth. So do not use the software that comes with it if you're running it on a Mac. You use Photo Booth instead.
DinoLight also makes one.
DinoLight makes the better one, no question about it, but it's $450 versus like $20.
Oh yeah, you can spend $1,000 on some of their ones. Yeah, they're expensive,
Easily.
but they work.
And that's how you can see the very fine details that I'm coming up with.
Yeah, with the DinoLight, you can actually look at the bamboo fibers on the part India paper and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's way beyond my needs right now. But even the ones from Lighthouse are either a 2 megapixel or a 5 megapixel. The 2 megapixel is like, okay, it's all right. And it's like $20–$30. The 5 megapixel, which is what I'm using, is about $170, and it's definitely better. So I can recommend those, and I do not represent Lighthouse. So there you go. But I also use a Fujitsu ScanJet 600 for scanning large sheets and stuff like that are too large to fit onto my flatbed scanner. That way I can document some of the more interesting items I've got. And of course, you have to use Photoshop for that, or Photoshop elements. Sorry, I'm in the Bay Area where everybody speaks computerese.
What resolution do you recommend? And Alan might have a comment there too.
It depends upon what I'm doing. If it's my Scott 295s, I scan at 1200 DPI because above that, you don't get any advantage.
Peripheral, no advantage,
yeah. 300 or lower, don't waste your time. 600 is what I'm using when I'm at the Beethoven Center scanning first editions of Beethoven scores, because that's above print quality. 300 is considered print quality. 600, if it's something seriously important, like you got a letter from somebody saying, I survived the Hindenburg, you want to scan that at about probably 600 DPI.
Thank you.
And it goes quicker than scanning at 1200 DPI.
Huh. Yeah.
Okay, enough from me.
So, all right, are we all talked out? For a
Yes.
third?
Thank
Oh,
you
really
for doing this.
interesting.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you, Alan. Thank you very, very much. Interesting talk.
Well,
when is that book coming out?
don't ask.
It's a bit like asking a graduate student when he's defending.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's usually when the tuition runs out, right?
Well, yeah.
10 years.
Or when your significant other says enough.
I think it would be good, Peter, if with your Excel spreadsheet, to get a bit of consistency perhaps between the various spreadsheets that people might be going to develop. Because, you know, there's obviously many different ways of doing Excel.
Of course.
You might organize it. It might be interesting, you know, if people have got other examples of it, to try and get some sort of uniform method of doing it so that it's easier for people to be able to look at them and figure out what's happening and all the rest.
That is an extremely good idea. And frankly, somebody like APS should have probably come up with a set of rules, suggestions, so that we don't have to constantly reinvent the wheel.
The best practices. Same for scanning items.
Yes. And when I'm scanning 2,500 copies of this one stamp, I store them by using the file creation date as the name of the file. And then after that, I provide a brief description of the stamp. So because the stamp, the train sometimes wanders up, down, sideways, whatever, I include that in the title of the file. And then I store that file name in my Excel spreadsheet. So I can find it, because otherwise it will disappear. You'll never find it again. Sorry, I used to work at the Library of Congress.
In terms to have the template, we should have a template for Excel that everybody be using the same thing.
Yes.
Like that is easier to import into a database because all the fields will be the same. I mean, it's pretty easy to import an Excel. You convert it to a CSV file and you can bring that into any database and it'd be easier to handle later on.
Yes.
If everybody has
If anybody wants to share their Excel spreadsheet with me, I'm a published author. I'll do the research and do the compare and contrast, and maybe hopefully Lynn's or some other publication that I don't know of would be willing to publish this. So we do have a standard format. I think it's well past time.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea.
Perhaps as another little add-on, we could ask Clive, when he's doing his album easy, he could have an instruction in it that when we put that in, it would automatically come up with all known copies of a certain stamp when we're making it pages.
Yeah, good luck on that one. Because the dealers are going to say, yeah, I got a couple of copies. And the collectors say, no, I don't have any of those.
But Raphael, that was a great suggestion.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Alan. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
See what you started, Alan?
Thank you.
No, stamp collectors are dangerous people.
Okay, take care.
Okay.
In the supplementary material for an article that was on the British Philatelic Association mail out of the UK when there was currency exchange limitations. There's actually an Excel spreadsheet listing the covers in one collector's collection of such covers. And I think the numbers go up to 65,000 and then restart at least twice.
Yeah.
That's from 1939 to about 1954.
Well, that does bring up an important point. In library cataloging, if you're like a public library, the community library, they can use the absolute stripped down version. But if it's something like the Western Philatelic Library over here in Redwood City, you have to tweak the spreadsheet to your needs, and therefore we lose uniformity. But that is absolutely typical within library science, where you've got a general library versus a special library. They have to have their own cataloging methodology, which is totally annoying. But at least they start with the basic, then they add on. They do not replace with something completely different. Does that make sense?
I think that's a good point when you do the template is if specialty societies need to add on, they have room to do that.
Right.
But you keep the other information pretty standard.
Yeah.
That's a really good
So
point.
we should come up with an absolute basic Excel spreadsheet list of requirements. It must have a Scott number or whatever number. It must do this, this, and this. And then beyond that, then you get into the special things, such as with my Scott 295 collection.
I mean, I guess you can have a field that specifies the catalog name and the other one will be the catalog number. Like that is make it more generic. You know, the column, that's what I do in my database that I use for my own, keeping up my track of my stuff and collections.
I like that
so
idea.
it could be Eddie Field, iBird, or anything like that in one column. And the other one would be the catalog number.
Yeah, that way people don't have to go out and do, translate to someone else's catalog,
Yeah. Yes.
because that won't happen.
Yeah. And we're not allowed to type in all of the Scott numbers for any one country because that's copyright infringement.
Yeah.
Really?
So, yeah. Of course, if I understand the copyright restrictions, if you want to use the Scott numbers for a publication, such as another catalog of like U.S. Freaks, Airs, and Oddities or something, you have to pay the owner of that copyright. And sometimes it's not very much. And maybe being that this is a bunch of individual collectors, maybe they might take pity on us and actually give it to us or allow us to use it at a minimal price.
That's something I wanted to ask. We have had a lecture about copyright because that's something that's important right now. If you're creating that and we adding pictures or keeping pictures of all the photographs, some of them may be copyrighted. I would like to know or have at least a lecture that someone who's an expert on that can tell us, this is what is copyright. If you download something from a website and put it for your record keeps, I guess that'd be okay. But if you're going to publish a publication later on, do you need to ask permission and things like that?
Yes, that is correct.
Good idea, Raphael.
That would be a great webinar.
Yeah, and I'm more than willing to chime in on that because the Library of Congress is the U.S. Authority on copyright legislation, laws, and generally how not to mess things up. So I've got a little bit of knowledge. I didn't work in that area, but I've got a little bit of knowledge because I've published some reference books about musical instrument manufacturers. And I try very hard not to get into copyright problems because it can get nasty real fast.
I thought you were going to say you play a lawyer on TV, a copyright lawyer on TV.
You'd have to be a copyright lawyer to really do it because in the United States, there's something called the Disney Act. Anybody know that one?
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Well, they've changed it slightly. So originally it was anything published or put down in any format whatsoever prior to 1921. Now it's 1924. So it's a moving target for United States. For the rest of the world, it requires somebody who really knows that subject well. Because if you're here in the United States and you start downloading stuff off the British Library's philatelic board, I'm assuming they have that, you can get into some serious trouble. And the French National Library, don't even mess with those guys.
Peter, is that something you'd be comfortable trying to find someone in that area to give a talk?
I don't know anybody in that area because I've been out of the Library of Congress for over 30 years.
Okay.
But I'm willing to at least be part of the effort to find the information.
Okay. Well, I
But
could
it-
reach out to the, the ABA,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure they would be stamp specific. You know what I mean? They wouldn't be able to answer the philatelic questions.
Right. But, like genealogical information that you're downloading off the internet, that gets into a completely different topic because of several things involving, of all things, the Mormon Church getting access to genealogical information from all over the world. They're required to make that available for free to everybody.
They
But-
charge on their website. You have to have a
Oh, I'm sure they
subscription,
do.
like I do. So
Yeah, I was not aware that they're now charging. I'm not surprised.
I have a subscription to it, and they're, but yeah, I don't know. I thought you have to pay. That's interesting.
Maybe they were just simply required to make it available to the public. In other words, keep it vague and let them charge if they want to. I don't know. This is outside of my area of knowledge, but it's something that as history geeks, which we are, we're constantly fighting against the copyright restrictions or people who say, yes, I've got it. No, I will not send you a photograph of it.
Yeah, that's right. Mickey Mouse, the first Mickey Mouse is out of public domain now.
Yep.
Folks, I've got other things to do tonight.
Alan,
I'm going to
Thank you.
say,
Thank you.
y'all
Yes.
can-
thank you very much. Great
Thank you,
talk.
Alan.
Thank you so much, Alan. That was wonderful.
Yeah, terrific.
we'll be
Thank
in
you,
touch.
Alan, for getting a good discussion going.
Yeah, I think it's a well-needed discussion, Alan. It's
I
really
think so. I didn't expect so much conversation.
good.
Well,